10 minutes, and want to take up 2 or 3 major points, allude to them without elaborating on them. First of all, I want to congratulate Lamsi and his colleagues for this wonderful record of publications. 4 books, substantial books, and if those who introduce the books are to be believed, major contributions to their respective areas. Now, it's not very easy for a small center like this to produce 4 books of this kind. And the books grew out of conferences, so one should also talk about the informal interaction that fed into the book. So, grateful thanks on behalf of. And the other thing is, of the 4 speakers, 3 of them are from the political science department, ex-colleagues of mine, and I want to thank them for making it easier for me to talk about them and talk about their contributions. I think Professor Dr. Amit Mitra was absolutely right when he talked about the tribal communities. And I have always been struck by 2 or 3 things about the tribal communities. If one looks at the discussion or the discourse on tribal communities in India, with their counterparts in other parts of the world, one is struck by some very important differences. The word tribal, for example, would rarely be used, or it would be used in a slightly different sense in what it was used. In Canada, they would talk about the original nations of Canada. Here, the nearest would be something called Adivasis. The Adi has no idea of nations. Again, it's very striking that tribal communities there are seen as claimants to certain rights by virtue of having been there, and therefore entitled to certain degree of not only equality or autonomy, but equal right to shape the identity of the country. In Canada, for example, the national symbols of national identity include the so-called original nations, which in India they do not. And if you look at our 7 major symbols of national identity, tribals don't figure anywhere. National anthem, national motto, national crest, tribals don't figure anywhere. So they are there, and our attitude has been largely protectionist. How do we protect them? How do we help them? And that requires a lot of explanation. Why have we taken this attitude? What are the strengths and limitations of that attitude? And how does it steer the attention we pay to them? But that again is a subject for discussion on some other occasion, but a very important one. About Nehru, what can one say? And I want to say 1 or 2 things. I want to thank Revadan for some kind words about my contribution, but I want to reflect on what Nehru meant to us and why he has become a site for contestation. Systematic process of de-Nehruization in the hands of the BJP and the RSS, not by BJP, but certainly in the hands of the RSS. How do you explain that process? Not simply that they thought that Panditji was Islamophile or coming from Kashmir, he was pro-Muslim and therefore was very pro-minority, not that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, during Panditji's time, Muslims got no more representation than after him. If you look at Muslims in strategic positions, they didn't occupy great positions during Panditji's time. And if you take 2 periods in our history, there is not much striking difference between what Muslims did in education and in other areas during Nehru's time and what happened subsequently. So not that he was particularly kind or favorable to them. So why this animus against Nehru? Not just because of his family. Partly, yes, but that by itself doesn't explain not just animus against him as a person, but animus against what he stood for. What is this animus directed against? Modernization? No, because the BJP crowd is all for modernization. Scientific temper? Well, yes, but again, the BJP's crowd all for it. I remember spending 2 wonderful days with Atal Bihari Vajpayee about 15 years ago when we were both in Oxford. He said, Parekh Sahab in Oxford dikhaiye. So I was taking him around Oxford, and at the end of the day when we came and sat down for lunch, I turned to Atalji and said, Atalji, ये BJP जो है भारतीय संस्कृति क्या चीज़ है वो? What is भारतीय संस्कृति? And I shall never forget what he said. He thumbed his hand on the table and said, अगर होती ना तो इतना गिरते नहीं हम. अगर होती ना तो इतना गिरते नहीं हम. If we had it, we wouldn't have fallen so low. Now, So Bharati Sanskrit, that's not an area where he differed from Panditji. In fact, in Atal Bihari's time when he was the Prime Minister, Panditji's photograph dominated the scene. So what is this animus, not BJP as such, RSS, what is the RSS animus against Nehru for? Foreign policy? Well, maybe, but not quite. Modernization, no. Scientific, but RSS talks about homogenizing the Hindus and creating a single Hindu community, which is what Panditji ended up doing in his own way. And that's something I don't want to answer. Again, I have written about it, but I hope you will certainly think about this question. And one of the things that grows out of this is a remark that haunted me for days when I first heard it. I was giving a lecture at Bombay University, and I'd say something about Gandhi. And somebody from the audience said, Professor, you keep referring to him as the father of the nation. Who made him father of the nation? How did he become father? Now that remark, painful for me to listen to, and I suppose for him to speak, but it made a good deal of sense. As a scholar, I step back and ask myself, yes, who made him father? To use the phrase first, and I didn't get one of my PhD students to do some research on who used the word father of the nation, whether it's Marx or somebody else. Why was Gandhi called father of the nation, when in fact the nation would not even recognize him as a father, not even as an uncle? Why is he the father of the nation? What made him father, and what is it about him? And is it the animus against Gandhi, which is directed against Nehru? Gandhi is seen as somebody who handed over the legitimacy of the independence movement to Nehru when he said, you are my political heir, and long after I am gone, you will speak my language. So the entire legitimacy of the struggle for independence, which Gandhi symbolized, he passed on to Nehru, and the animus against him is, he foisted Nehru on us. But how did he foist Nehru? Well, by Sardar Patel. And the statue of Sardar is only going to be with us in a few weeks' time. So I think the second thing about the important thing to understand is not just Nehru as the central figure in India's history. And to me, I grew up in the shadow in India, as did many of you who are past 50. For me, he was a very formative influence. He was somebody who was broadcast on the radio, but deeply moving. And many of us loved India, simply because of the way in which he talked about us. So a man who could inspire millions, who laid the foundations of all the great institutions that have stood Narendra Modi and his cronies in good stead. Where would IITs be? Where would our universities be without Nehru? This man laid the foundations of our representative institutions. So given all this, one needs to understand what it is that the RSS and other people feel so uneasy about in Nehru, and equally, and I'm sure this will be coming in a few years' time, equally uneasy about Gandhi. And I have no doubt at all that in 10 years' time, Gandhi would be a figure of either fun in certain circles or a strange phantom haunting the nation. Because he moved away ideologically so far that he is increasingly becoming inaccessible to us. Many of these ideas, we can't even get a mental grip on these things. And you can see where the process is going to lead. And I think the third thing I wanted to, third area that I would like briefly to comment, and I said I'll stop in 5-7 minutes, is Indian democracy. Indian democracy is a strange phenomenon. We take pride in it. I wonder why. And since I have to defend this outside India, because I live in England, people say the largest democracy. And I said that's a biological fact. The Indians multiply faster than any other people. So we are 1.3 billion. What is it? Why is it the largest? Why is it the greatest? It's not the greatest, then we would admit. So it's the largest, meaning more people. Why is that to be proud of? Simply because people reproduce faster. Is that a matter to be proud of? So the question is, if democracy is about the quality of public deliberation, institutionalization of dissent and discussion, can we say that we are one of the finest democracies in terms of dissenting tradition, discussion, some work on this and wrote about it. I mean, if you take our assemblies, parliament, how many days of deliberation and how many bills have been passed on the same day that they were introduced? In Puducherry, for the last 11 years, no bill has ever been, almost every bill introduced has been passed on the same day. There is no deliberation, nothing of the kind. West Bengal is in the same category as lots of others. So if you look at the media, a friend of mine, and he loves India, he said, look, if you look at Indian newspapers, the quality of debate has gone down so tremendously. There's no use pretending otherwise. If we really want this country to improve, as I very much want it to, we must face facts. And the facts are that our democracy today is not something that we can be proud of. And there is a deeper reason why we can't be proud of, and that is what I would call the crisis of representation. And every democracy today is representative. No direct democracy, representative. So the quality of democracy has to be judged by the quality of representation. Who are the people we send into parliament, in the assembly? And are these the upright people? Are these the people who can deliberate intelligently? And I think our constitution makers, in my view, made a very understandable mistake of imagining that the future representatives would be exactly like them. So they were products of a great independent struggle under Gandhi, great idealists, altruistic. They assumed that these are the kinds of people who will fight in elections and who will represent the country. They couldn't be more wrong. And one is almost tempted to agree with Kant when he said, if you design a representative institution, imagine a race of devils and design representative institutions for the race of devils. Otherwise, there will be a complete mess of what you have, which is what has been happening under every form of government. So the crisis of representation is a deep crisis, and it can't simply be solved by people writing letters or making, enjoying more freedom. So I think these are many of the questions that we need to ask. Religious demography is another one, which is again of some interest to me. This is the question that was thrown at us all the time in the UK. A great racist, intelligent man, Powell said of blacks in 1968 called the Rivers of Blood speech. He said blacks and browns, which means Indians and others and West Indians, are going to take over the country. And he said, when I see them coming in, I can see River Tigers foaming with much blood. And I can see these guys eventually wanting to take over our country. 1968, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of their speech when we recently on the TV. Nothing like that happened, but the debate goes on. The British immigration debate very often reminds me of the Indian debate on Muslims. And I think it's about time we grew out of that debate. How many are they? Where are they multiplying? What an absurd way of talking about your fellow citizens. But there it is. I think I have said more than I should. Thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you for listening.